Xalt is a one-of-a-kind, lightweight tool that tracks job execution and library usage. Use of Xalt will allow HPC centers to improve efficiency and the user experience.
Xalt is a tool or infrastructure that we use to track linkage information, namely libraries and other objects, and also job execution information. This infrastructure tracks things that really haven't been tracked before, and so that makes it very useful for centers to make strategic decisions about how to support software and how to help their users, and just be more sort of cost efficient in what they're doing with their time. Xalt technically doesn't really stand for anything anymore. It's a takeoff on a previous prototype that we called ALD, Automatic Library Tracking Database. But again, it doesn't stand for anything. It's just a new name. It doesn't stand for anything. Well, the prototypes that I mentioned before were developed for one machine. ALD was developed for Craze, and my collaborators' prototype was developed for their machine, Attack. This project we are developing with those machines in mind, plus several others, ones we have and other centers. We're trying to make sure it will work on any cluster, or Cray, or SGI, or whatever. So that in mind, each machine has a different job or code launcher. And so it's hard to be portable and generic, and yet every machine and every site sometimes has a unique code launcher. So that's the part we're trying to balance, that we have wrappers for each of those code launchers and yet have one code base that people can install anywhere. We're also providing multiple mechanisms that for the data we track, multiple mechanisms for that data to get into the database. There's at least 3 different ways where you can go sort of straight to the database. You can put it in files, you can put it in syslog, whatever. And again, this allows a site to choose a method of moving information around automatically that they might prefer with various concerns about either files or database queries, whatnot. So again, we think this is going to be very good and be a very nice feature a lot of other sites will like, that they get to pick and choose how it works. Well, Xalt tracks libraries that are used at link time. We also plan to add functions as well. That's not there today, but will be within the next quarter or two. And it also tracks what happens at job execution time, actually code execution time. We capture options for how the code is run, as well as environment variables. All this data together gives you a picture of stuff that, again, centers haven't had in the past to look at things. So, for example, I can track and I can tell who's used every library on our machine in their code. When is this important? As an example, if a code has a bug in it, and this has happened, and we want to contact the users who have used this buggy code, I can tell who used it and when. And I can tell them exactly that information without spamming the entire user base. Another use of it is, and this is something NERSC is doing with one of the older prototypes, they're letting their users query the database to find out how they built their code, say 6 months ago or a year ago. Why is this useful? Because sometimes they are unable to build it the same way, or they're getting different results. And it's also useful when you start talking about reproducibility, which is a big topic these days. And also on the run side, on some machines like Craze, some of the environment variables affect performance. You can change their settings and get different performance. I'm going to have those environment variables and their values, as well as how the code ran. And it all links back to the libraries that were used. So I can put this whole picture together of how they were doing stuff. And another feature of Xalt that's coming is we're going to be able to also compare the runtime environment against the compile time environment. With the use of shared libraries more and more these days, a lot of codes can bomb out immediately if the runtime environment isn't the same as the compile time environment. And we can catch that and probably even tell the users before they even need to submit a ticket. Again, it's a feature that's coming. So That's, you can see how the users can use this. They can have a direct impact by helping us helping catch potential runtime errors, also letting them see how they built their codes in the past. It lets centers know who's using what libraries, so thus the staff can figure out where to focus their efforts, what things they can get rid of if they're not being used at all. And it even has benefits for the greater community. I mean, developers, vendors, even funding agencies probably care who uses what libraries the most, what functions in them are getting used the most. You can see where, again, efforts could be focused based on knowledge gained. So,
Xalt testing has concluded and the package will be completed and released by November 1st, 2014.
well, we're about to release the beta. We've had an alpha release and various versions since then, since early summer. Again, this beta release will have everything but the function tracking and the runtime check against the compile time. We expect those two features to be in soon, but time and effort. It's probably going to take us a quarter to 2 quarters to get it in and test them out to our satisfaction. So I would expect no more than 4 to 6 months out that all the features we plan to have in Xalt will be in it and probably fully debugged in a complete released version. What we're releasing now has been on through a lot of testing on a lot of machines already. We've tested most of these various modes that it has, and it's in production on a couple machines right now. TAC has it in production on Stampede. We have it here in production next on our Cray XE30 Darter and our Keeneland machines. And when it gets deployed, when done well, no one notices. We've had 6 other centers, from Los Alamos to NCSA to CSCS and KAUST, who've inquired about Xalt. They are running one of the prototypes I mentioned, LD, and so they know about this new version coming, and they're interested, and they've gotten the alpha source and they've tested it out, and they've been fairly pleased, even with the alpha that had some bugs. We have a whole user community that we've been developing for the last year since supercomputing, and have a mailing list, and when the beta comes out, they're all going to be notified. And that's probably how we're going to support most of them. And the previous prototype, LD, has about 10 customers already, and I expect them and many more to want this when we go live. I think in a week or less. So that's our current. It's kind of what we expect and what we see. In terms of, again, has anything like this existed before? 5 years ago when I did the first prototype LD, again, I did a search then, and there was only a couple things that mildly did something like this, and it was on maybe one machine, one architecture. And in that since I developed LD, there has been a couple of other attempts. The one at TAC that I'm partnering with now for Xalt, and we're combining our 2 prototypes. And there was another one done at Buffalo. But the TAC effort and mine from 5 years ago are the two lightest weight methods of tracking this information that users don't see. It doesn't affect anyone's performance. And all we had to do was combine what we were doing and target more than our home institutions. And it's really easy to make it portable. Like I said, all you have to do to make it portable in some sense is to make sure you have code launchers for other machines, other sites. So you have everything from a whole bunch of different kinds of MPI run commands depending on your MPI and your vendor, to Cray's app run, to the IB run at TAC and S run at LANL, and I'm sure there's a whole host of more of these kinds of things. And you just have to create wrappers for each of them. And it's not that hard because under the covers they're all very similar. But you have to create enough of the wrapper experience to cover it. So that's what we're working on. And again, there's really no tools like this out there other than these few prototypes. We're the only ones gathering this information. Most centers gather this information by doing surveys. And surveys are incomplete at best. You usually only get a small percentage of your user base responding, and even the responses you get aren't usually 100% accurate, even in the responses. And we have the information, and I can track it down to when they did things at a certain time, which is very useful when you're trying to debug issues. Yes, it's NSF funded. We're starting the second year of our 2-year project. Yes, it will be free. It's going to be open source. That was part of our proposal to NSF, that this would be open source GPL licensed software.
The Xalt beta release will be available to HPC centers via SourceForge and GitHub.